morning, everyone, and welcome to our immersive simulation, This Connected Future. I am Giacomo Mariotti, Tech for Good lead at Nesta Italia, and I'm going to be your host today, together with my friend Cristina Pozzi, CEO of Impactscool.
Welcome, everyone. Hello, also from my side. I am very excited to be here today with you as we will reflect together on the future of Internet. And with our choices in this immersive simulation, today we will shape possible scenarios and analyze how we can impact the future to drive it in the direction that we prefer.
Okay, so just to set a little bit of context before we go into the simulation. So, it's great to be here today as part of the NGI Policy Summit. It has been a great event so far with a very ambitious goal. So we want to lay out a European vision for the future Internet and explore the policy interventions and, the technical solutions that can help us get there. From our colleagues yesterday on main stage and also in the workshop sessions, and we heard about the European values we aim to build into the fabric of the next generation Internet. We heard about the challenges we're facing today and also about tangible solutions that are being developed on a local, national, and also European scale. So the discussion about the Internet and its future is very complex. So it touches on so many very current challenges that our societies are facing today. The NGI discussion touches on topics like data sovereignty, safety, privacy, sustainability, fairness, just to name a few, as well as also on the implications that new technologies like AI and blockchain mean for the future of the Internet, and also around the some of the concerns around them, like ethics and sustainability. So for each of all these many aspects, we need to take a design stance, guided by the very values that we want to build into the future of the Internet, and we want these values to be radiated by it. But going from principles and values down to design choices turns out to be very hard. Because making these design choices is difficult. Not only there is the question of how we even make these decisions and who should be involved, to which summits like this are an answer, but also there is the added complexity coming from the interaction between all these areas and the trade-offs the design choices force us to make. So what we want to do today, there's all this complexity, and what we want to do today with our workshop is to try bring to life some of these difficult decisions and trade-offs to hopefully help us reflect on some of the aspects and maybe some of the aspects that we haven't considered so far, just to sparkle some new thoughts that can help us in navigating this complexity. So we will do so by looking at them at all these aspects from different perspectives, and also trying to imagine the consequences of our decision. So we've set the context a little bit, so it's time to jump on the driver's seat and tackle some of these challenges firsthand. So we will do so through an immersive simulation. Cristina, would you like to explain us a little bit how everything will work?
Of course. Thank you, Giacomo, for setting everything in its place, so to help us understand why we are here. So as you said, this is an immersive simulation about the future. So what does it mean? We will deep dive into possible future scenarios that will emerge from our choices. So everyone and each of you who are participating to this immersive simulation will help us shape the possible future scenarios that we want to reflect together about. So, of course, it is impossible to know exactly what the future holds, but what we can do is that we can explore different models and be open to a lot of different possibilities in order to be ready to navigate the future, whatever it holds, so that we will have some training to do so. And also in order to make more responsible choices today, because we already tried to simulate what could happen if we make some different choices. So here is how we will work today. We will present you with 4 challenges in the form of binary dilemmas, and we'll see them one at a time and ask you to vote for your preferred choice. I know it's a little bit difficult to really choose between 2 very different and binary choices. And you could be tempted to ask for a 3rd choice in between, for example. But in this game, we cannot give you such a choice. So we will need you to make a decision, and also in a very short time. So what will happen then? Based on the majority of your choices, we will find ourselves in different outcomes and comment them together. So are you ready to explore the future together? So we will also interact through a tool that is called Slido. So we will ask you to interact through that. And so let's start for presenting our first dilemma, and then we will guide you through the tool and how to use it. So our first dilemma is about data privacy. So should we go in a direction that protects above all personal data, or should we share data for a greater good? So if you are thinking that you don't care about privacy because you have nothing to hide, you should probably think about it a little bit more. Data creates information that can be used in many different ways. So protecting your data means protecting you not only from thieves, but also from possible discriminations and control exercised by states or big tech companies who end up knowing more things about you than you do yourself. So I say protect your data privacy to protect your freedom.
Yes, that sounds really good, Cristina. But protecting personal data, as you describe it, making also means making it inaccessible for many very positive uses that would benefit society as a whole, and thus making the opportunities that our technology today provides us with. Think about the major problems like population health and global crime and terrorism. Surely solving these issues is worth more than anyone's individual privacy. Think also about smaller things that just make our life a little bit easier and somewhat more pleasurable. By sharing some information about your car position, for example, we all benefit from up-to-the-minute traffic-aware navigation. By sharing the movies we pick, we all benefit from higher quality content that meets our individual taste. I say that sharing is caring.
Let's hear what everybody has to say about it. So let's try to vote on this first dilemma. So I will ask our colleague Thomas to share a slide with the Slido code so that we can have you vote for your choice. So let's remind you. So now we are voting for the dilemma of data privacy. So do you vote for protection of personal data above all, or data sharing for a greater good? So you can join slido.com and just use the code that you see in the slide. So hashtag NGI 2020. And through that, you will be able to vote for your personal choice in this dilemma. So I will give you a few seconds to give us your preference.
Just posted the link to our Slido in the chat again, so you can find it there. So let's give one round of the clock. anyone is experiencing any issue with accessing the poll, please write in the chat. Yeah, I think let's give it a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, Thomas, we can close the poll. All right, so we can see the results.
Wow. So in this case, my my presentation was a winner one. So we prefer to protect data privacy above all. We will see after we finish all our choices that there will be some interactions also between the different dilemmas. So we have now a starting point. So we want a scenario in which data privacy is the greater good more than everything else. So we will see what happens when we make it interact with other dilemmas about our future internet. So let's, I would say, dive into a new dilemma to see what happens then. So Giacomo, what's the next choice that we must make?
Yes, so next up is algorithms. So our second choice. So our choice here is either to prioritize algorithms' efficiency, namely how well they perform the task we define for them, or ethics. So the consideration of human principles like justice, inclusion, and truth. So here, I would argue for efficiency. Efficiency, after all, is the very reason why we use algorithms. When we are faced with a task we cannot humanly solve, say because the scale is too large or because it requires processing too much information, what we do, we instruct an algorithm to solve it for us by maximizing a metric we give them. For example, say we need to decide who should be approved for a loan out of a government scheme. Here we might choose the repayment rate as our metric, so how many people end up repaying the loan. So what's important is that, overall, we achieve the highest repayment rate in this case, even if that means that some minorities or that on average are more likely to default are maybe precluded access to the scheme. But overall, we benefit as a collective. I say that efficiency delivers the highest overall benefit for us all. What do you say, Cristina?
Well, yes. Algorithms aim to efficiency, of course, but as you said, algorithms are not human, and human beings are not efficient in that sense. We have common sense and we have ethics. So, of course, we cannot give all the choices to algorithms in these important things. So that is why, if they only aim to efficiency and they don't have common sense and ethics, they cannot make just decisions for us. We need ethics to prevail on efficiency in order to make sure that our society remains human, supportive, and inclusive for all. So I say, choose human algorithms, choose ethics.
Thank you, Cristina. Let's see what our guests think about that. So we're going to have another round of voting. So again, on Slido, you can find the new poll. I think we're getting more experienced now. So I think probably we can, let's give 30 seconds. Okay, the votes are coming through. Okay, let's give it a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think we can, let's close the poll and see what we got. Okay, so I think ethics is winning. Cristina, you're really doing a better job than me at arguing for a side. But now I am gaining some margin. So definitely a closer choice. And I think this is a one where we will maybe reflect on when we get to the final stage. But let's go with the majority vote and pick ethics over efficiency in this very binary choice. And of course, from the chat, it's already emerging that we are forcing our guests to choose that when both sides are probably important and some elements should really be maintained. But let's go with this for now. Yeah. So I think we can do another round. Cristina, what do we have next?
Yes, now we are more trained, so now we want to complicate a little bit what we are doing. So we will vote for 2 dilemmas at once. So we will ask you to think about both dilemmas separately, but to vote for them in only one time. So our next step is to decide whether we want centralization or decentralization. And the second dilemma will be whether we want moderated or freewheeling information. So I will start on centralization. So a centralized system makes it easier to control data and to give access to more people to new technologies and innovations. So it will be easier, to invest and to be sure to fix everything that doesn't work. So I say we need a centralized system to guarantee security.
Yeah, but I think we end up, we find ourselves in a somewhat centralized system today. But originally, the internet was designed to be open and decentralized, right? And for good reason. With a handful of giant companies with monopoly control, we end up forcing policies on the users. What if a central system, for example, becomes ruled by an autocratic government that uses the control power over the internet to further entrench itself and limit people's freedom? Both these scenarios, unfortunately, sound very familiar, right? Big companies and autocratic governments, don't they? I say that decentralization is key for democratic and empowering internet. But let's see what our guests think about this. But before we go there, as you said, we're gonna also face another challenge, right?
Yes, of course. So as we said, moderation against freewheeling information. So I will start with moderation. So, fake news, conspiracy theories, interference in political elections, info bubbles, polarization, violence online. Remember how last year it took Facebook more than 15 minutes to take off live streaming of extreme violence during the Christchurch shooting, for example? So should I go on and on about this? There are many other examples. So these are all things that can be controlled with a system that moderates what goes online. So I say moderation is the only way to guarantee responsible citizenship.
No, okay, I see your point. But at the same time, moderation sounds like a softer word for censorship to me. Freedom of speech is one of the fundamental pillars of our society. We stand on the shoulders of giants who fought and died to give people a voice, the undeniable right to express their opinion. The internet is just a medium that helps us advance this principle by giving even more people a voice. I say that people should be free to express themselves on the internet and do so without fear.
I think we gave our guests a lot to think about, so let's give them a little bit of time to vote on these two dilemmas. So let's start with the voting session. Okay, here is the first dilemma: centralization or decentralization. I see that someone is already voting, so thank you for doing so. Let's see where you will take us with our collective choices.
Okay, so the votes are flowing through. So we're going to stop and reflect on the first one and then go into the second one, just with a super quick recap of what we're voting on. But I think we're almost there. So let's give it the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we can close the poll and see where we are.
I think this time, Giacomo, you were better than myself in arguing for your decentralization option, and it's a vast majority actually.
Yeah. And I think in these cases when we have a pretty polarized floor, at the end maybe it would be interesting to hear from the voice outside. The people that decided to take a different stance, just to hear their thoughts. So if you feel comfortable, maybe at the end we can hear from you what you say about the choice you made. But let's go into the other question. So we were talking about content moderation versus absolute freedom of and the freewheeling information. So another round of voting. Let's give you some time.
I think we can give you the last 10 seconds.
Okay.
So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's stop the voting.
Okay. Oh, okay. This one was closer. So we got freedom winning over content moderation, but by a tighter margin. Okay. So I think we've gone through 4 rounds of choices. So let's recap a little bit where we are. So we talked about privacy. Protecting personal data versus sharing the data for the greater good. And in that case, we decided collectively to go for personal data protection. What was next, Cristina?
Well, we had ethics against efficiency, talking about algorithms. And in that case, we decided for ethics.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
And next up was systems, right? So we had centralization versus decentralization, and collectively we decided to go for decentralization. And finally,
freewheeling information against moderation. And what did we choose?
we decided to go for freedom. So
Yeah.
no content moderation, letting people speak freely about what they want on the internet without any control. So what, on the base of this decisions, let's see what scenario we reached.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Very curious. So what you see on the screen now is a scenario that we've developed on the base of this
Combination, let's
combination,
say.
exactly, combination of choices. Maybe I can just read it out loud, and we can comment on what this looks like. So we decided to call this the individual-centric internet. So it's a decentralized and distributed points of access to the internet that make it easier for individuals to manage their data and the information they're willing to share online. Everything that is shared is protected and can be used only following strict ethical principles. People can communicate without relying on big companies that collect data for profit. Information is totally free, and everyone can share anything online with no filters. What do you think about this scenario, Cristina?
Well, I think it has some good points, but also a few things that could be, more in nuances, because as we said, we were forcing ourselves to choose between black and white, and it's actually very difficult to do so. And also the scenarios that comes out sometimes can have some things that don't really work perfectly. But I think it's a fair enough scenario, considering all the others that we have tried to explore, because of course we tried to explore all the different possibilities. And what's interesting when you do this kind of exercise is that sometimes, even if some single choices seems very fair and very clear, if you think about them by themselves, only considering that choice, when you see the interaction that they can have with other choices, actually the scenario changes a lot. So that is why I don't dislike at all this one, because the interaction between the different parts still works in a better way than in other scenarios, where even if you choose, for example, ethics, but everything else goes in a different direction, still ethics then is not exercised at all. So even if it's a principal choice, then in the reality, probably it will not be exercised. So what do you think, Giacomo?
Yeah, no, I think this one is one scenario that's definitely very aligned with what we are discussing during this summit, and I think it resonates a lot with some of the core values that we hold dear at a European level. But nonetheless, I think there were some points where our guests were a bit undecided, right? So I think there was the point around ethics and efficiency. There was some interesting discussion going on there. And remind me what?
Yeah, well, actually, we had a question from Daniel, who was asking how an algorithm can be effective without ethics. And of course, it's a fair question, and I think very interesting one, on which, of course, a lot of researchers actually are working, because there are a lot of researchers who are trying to understand how to incorporate somehow ethics into algorithms, which is a very difficult task, because of course ethics is not something that is absolute, but turns out it changes a lot in between people, populations, and different countries. So for example, if we take the moral dilemma, that the experiment that MIT made online, when analyzing all the data about people answering to the dilemma about how an autonomous car should behave in a street when a possible accident could occur. Actually, the choices made by the people around the world were very, very different based on where they were based geographically, showing how culture and ethics can be very different. So this is a very important question, actually, because can we really put the ethics inside the algorithms, or should we create a system that ensures that there is some ethics aside from the algorithms and that can control how the algorithms is used?
Yeah, and I think this is another very related question is the one that Ludwig Bald was asking. How can an algorithm be ethical without working well? And I think they're pointing in a common direction, which is maybe we should really build into the algorithm the definition of and the constraints around how a certain decision should be made. And if we can embed this ethical principles within the algorithm itself, then maybe we can get the most of both worlds, having something that works well according to this extended constraints around ethics, and also by design fulfilling them. So this was a very interesting one. What we can do, Thomas, if I'm not creating trouble for you, we could look at what would have happened if we had chosen efficiency over ethics. So we can then explore another of our scenarios.
And of course, if anyone wants to comment or just share some thoughts or ask questions about how we develop the scenarios or anything else, just please use the chat and we will be happy to answer and to discuss it.
Yes, please do feel free to ask questions on the chat and shout out if you want to share your thoughts. So this is the other scenario. Would you like to go through it, Cristina?
Yeah. So we decided to call this scenario exclusive and individualistic internet. So in this scenario, we have a decentralized and distributed points of access to the internet that make it easier for individuals to manage their data and the information that they're willing to share online. Regulations for data protection are in place and are easy to exercise for individuals. In the search for efficiency, though, people are strongly recommended to voluntarily share or sell their data to make the internet and society better and to provide them with better services. So the greater good that we were talking about before. So the data collected this way is biased, and algorithmic injustice is ubiquitous, reinforcing inequalities and marginalizing minorities. So quite a different scenario, actually, from the one we analyzed before.
Yeah.
What do you think, Giacomo?
Yeah, no, and I think this probably reflects also our thoughts, right, around this issue.
Yeah.
What we try to do in these scenarios is to really extremize what the binary decision means. And in this case, we said efficiency over ethics. So that's why this scenario is really reflecting a world where we're striving for efficiency at any cost. But I hope that of course these are just scenarios, but it's they hopefully they can help sparkle some thoughts. So we have.
Yeah, actually, Simona is asking to see also the scenario where going back to ethics, so the base scenario that we chose altogether, but then we change the context moderated versus absolute freedom, as they were very similar. So let's do so again. If for Thomas is not too much trouble, let's see what happens in that scenario. And also for after that, I think it also would be interesting to see if any of you who voted for the minority in the choices that were very different, as Giacomo was suggesting before, wants to just tell us why they voted for centralized, for example, internet or efficiency. Because, of course, as we said, our scenarios reflect a little bit, of course, also our view. So, of course, it would be interesting to also have your points of view. So the aim of this session actually is to share your thoughts and to also create a discussion about these issues. So let's see the scenario that Simona was asking for. Would you like to read it, Giacomo?
Of course. So this scenario, just a quick recap, it's a scenario where we have data protection, a decentralized system, content moderation, and ethics. So this scenario reads as follows. So decentralized and distributed points of access to the internet to control the information flow that goes online from the end. Regulations for data protection are in place and are easy to exercise for individual. Trustworthy institutions champion the ethical use of data for the common good, and people support them by voluntarily sharing some of their data with them. So I think one aspect that we wanted to highlight with a scenario like this is that content moderation, if done well, can help really build trust and fight some of the issues we are seeing today of kind of complete lack of trust in information flows and the spreading of fake news, for example. So we try to give a positive spin to this scenario, but of course, content moderation is not always good. It needs to be done well. I think another angle we want to give to this scenario is that if there is trust, that means that maybe people are more willing to share data. So by creating a trustworthy environment, then even if we're protecting individuals' data, we can still get access to some data to be used for the greater good by asking people to voluntarily share it. What do you think, Cristina? Anything else you wanted to highlight about this scenario?
Well, I think that is also interesting that we thought that also decentralized internet can do so, because sometimes we tend to think that only a centralized internet can moderate somehow in a strong way the content that can go online. In fact, also us gave you the two dilemmas together because somehow they're connected, but they can also not be. So in this scenario, we see that somehow it could be working. But as we said, of course, we would love to hear also what you think, because sometimes when we try to explore the future and create scenarios with different things that are interacting, we maybe don't see the unwanted consequences of what we are choosing. So having also your points of view, of course, would be very interesting in order to really understand better these scenarios and deep dive into them and really understand how they could work if somehow they will happen in the future.
Yeah, and I was just noting some of the comments on the chat, and I noticed what Gordana is saying, that in a decentralized system, anyone can say anything as long as their source is identified. And I think this is an interesting point around transparency, right? Transparency about the source of the information, transparency about the individuals making a claim. I think this definitely helps build the trust on the system, and this obviously has got interesting interactions with the centralization versus decentralization point we talked about before.
And I see also Marcus has something to say about efficiency. So thank you for answering to our questions and our invite to share. And it's actually a very interesting comment, because Marcus is saying that in a lot of settings, maximizing efficiency means better sustainability outcomes. So if we look at efficiency that way, it's a very good thing to choose efficiency in this case. And maybe what I can argue looking at this comment is that probably efficiency can also be with ethics in this case, because if we are talking about sustainability, we're putting them together and not in a binary decisions as we did. So somehow we forced ourselves in a path that does not really have to reflect reality, maybe, and probably there can be some efficiency that goes together with ethics and goes in the direction of sustainability. What do you think, Giacomo, about this?
Yeah, no, definitely, and I think efficiency is not bad by itself, but I think let's if someone from the audience is willing to share their thoughts, it would be really great to hear from someone who has got a different point of view on certain topics. Like, for example, I remember that on the question around data privacy, content, like there was protecting personal data versus sharing data for the greater good. The vast majority voted for data protection. But if someone from the audience is happy to jump on the stage for a second and tell us what they think about the data sharing for the greater good, that would be great. And or also the other question around centralization versus decentralization. I think we ended up in a very polarized collective decision around picking decentralized systems. But maybe if someone wants to share their thoughts about what's good about the centralized system, we're very, very happy to hear it. So this is our workshop, right? I mean, it's a interactive session. So if you want, of course, nobody's forcing you. But if you're happy to take the stage, we're super happy to share it with you.
What we could do while we wait to see if someone wants to share something is maybe see, oh, there is someone in the screen. So Linda, is it because we want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought that I chime in. I was thinking about the sharing is caring part, and actually, I believe there's loads of data, of course, that's worth sharing for the greater good, to be privacy sensitive. So things like how people flow through the city to stave off traffic jams, stuff like that. So there's of course loads of data that you as a person do make happen, so to say, but that doesn't have to be privacy sensitive. So there's kind of a middle ground in that, maybe. And then for the centralized and decentralized part, well, it's always an easy answer to say it's somewhere in between, but it's probably somewhere in between, right? It makes sense to do some things very well, very centralized, but to also not make giant institutions of centralized organizations that have to arrange everything, because that also doesn't work every time. So those were my thoughts. Maybe someone else can also join in. I can see some people in the chat actually contributing.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing your thoughts, Linda. I think it's so true that sharing data sometimes is extremely helpful. It's not infringing anyone's privacy. Is there any example that comes to mind? Maybe of a data set. So you talked about preventing traffic jams. Anything else, maybe in the context of a city, that comes to mind to you?
Yeah, there's loads. So, for instance, healthcare data is, of course, most of the times very privacy sensitive, but there are things to be done to yeah, let me see if this is the best example, but to make sure the data can be used by all these different organizations, because that's of course most of the time a problem, right? In each domain you have all these different types of organizations. So in healthcare you have the doctor, and you have the hospital, and you have the insurance company, and you have all these different parties. And if they would be able to share at least the insights they get from their data, that would already help a lot. And you don't need a centralized institution. You just need to make sure they can actually share their data, but in a way that's safe and secure, and that doesn't hurt hurt privacy of the people. But I do think that the mobility domain, so how traffic and people are flowing through the city, that's a great example for where data sharing would be possible, also between like government type organizations and commercial organizations. Google, of course, knows far better what's happening in the city than the local municipality does. Then again, the local municipality knows sooner than Google where there's a street blocked off, stuff like that. So under the right conditions, some data sharing would actually be helpful.
And actually, thank you very much. While you were talking, also Simona Bialli put a comment in the chat going in this direction. As she said, I'm happy to share certain data to a certain extent if they are anonymized and they are for a greater good, like for research or improving some systems like transport and so on. So, of course, this is probably how a lot of us feel, as long as we have trust and we know that our data is used in a good way, and there are no discrimination and no dangers. Of course, we will be happy probably to share something and to help everyone else with that. So that is quite interesting.
I love that notion of Gordana in the chat, that you can't have open data without having closed data. Maybe she can elaborate a bit on it. I'll at least go out of the screen so anyone else can join in.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I think Vladimir and Gordana started very interesting points on the chat. If you want to jump on the stage, just ask to do so, and we will happily let you.
Well, actually, there is also a very interesting conversation in the chat between Vladimir and Marcus. I would love to hear from them if you want, of course. Otherwise, we can just stick to the chat and see what you were talking about. So you were discussing, just to tell it to everyone, about centralization and decentralization. And what came out is that with decentralization, that there is the risk that the shared responsibility means that no one is responsible. So the accountability about what's happening on the internet could be difficult to really control, and so it could also have some unwanted consequences in that direction. So I think it would be interesting to elaborate more on this. So Vladimir was saying that the best way is public-private people collaboration for this. If you want, Vladimir, even in the chat, to elaborate more about this, I'm very curious to know more about this collaboration and how you envision it, and also data cooperatives you were talking about in the chat.
Yeah, and I think while we see if Vladimir wants to join the conversation even more, and thank you for everything you've shared so far. I think I think this point is very interesting, right? The point around accountability and responsibility. Oh, we've got Marcus.
Oh, there is Marcus.
Welcome, Marcus.
Great. Hi there. Thank you.
No worries. Sorry, I'm just jumping in very quickly, and I have to jump back out in a sec when the session wraps up. But this is more of a general point. And when you talk about decentralization and centralization, it obviously really matters what you're talking about, and so take it with a grain of salt. But the problem then becomes, if everything's super decentralized, who's actually in charge of setting the standards, promoting a solution that is like commonly considered the standard? Do you get a lack of cohesiveness, or a lack of, or just a plethora of different solutions that are maybe interoperable on a paper, but not in people's actual everyday usage of the tools? So decentralization can only go so far, and you do, I think, need some sort of common ground. And who provides that?
Yeah, I think, and who manages a decentralized system, right? I think this is an interesting point, and there are technologies that are emerging to do that, but a level of accountability around managing the system and ensuring that even the decentralized contributors can work effectively sometimes is necessary.
Yeah, and who designs the technology that allows for the distributed management, even if you do it. So it's never a perfectly decentralized system, I think.
Of course, and thank you so much, Marcus. And you're right. I think all these issues we talked about are very context dependent. So they are decentralization versus centralization depends on what you're applying to, and sometimes. The truth is in the middle somewhere. So what we try to do today, as I said, is to just making it extreme to force us to think about these issues. And it's so great to have seen so much interest and so many people joining our conversation. So thank you all for being part of this discussion. I think we are reaching the end of our session. So I just wanted to thank everyone for being part of the conversation, both through the polls and jumping on stage. Cristina?
Yeah, thank you very much. I was very excited to do this kind of simulation with you, and I'm very happy about the outcome. So thank you very much for participating, sharing your ideas and your points of view. I would love to talk about all the different scenarios that we tried to develop and all the different choices, because I think there are so many things we can learn just doing this kind of exercise. And so I just want to underline that it's very useful sometimes just to take some time and think about the possible future scenarios a little bit more, because we can learn a lot from them, and maybe we can also change slightly our point of view about different issues. That what happened to me actually while developing the scenarios with Giacomo. So I really hope we had more time to do these kind of things every day, actually, because there are so many difficult choices, and we wanted to show how complex it is to design these different scenarios for the future, and the policies that can help us get there. So I really hope that the session help us in this direction.
This was really fun. You did a really good job preparing this and the polls.
Thank you, Marcus.
Good fun. Good fun. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Marcus. So thank you again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the summit.
Thank you, everyone, and also to Thomas for helping us.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Bye-bye. Have a great rest of the summit.
Thank you.